Well, there's a lot of things going on these past 2 weeks. In fact, probably too much for a guy like me to keep track of. I guess the first thing to talk about is the Mashable Awards, and I've already put a post below this one explaining what I've decided to run for and what you should enter in. I'm actually not sure how they collate all the data and how they separate one vote from another, because there's a lot of different things that can go wrong. Like, people spell my name differently, and you can spell it about 4 different ways, and they have. Capitalization, spacing issues, things like that. And there are so many categories to vote for. I decided that I should probably just run for one. There was some negotiating with other people involved on what categories would be best suited for other people, but really it was just to avoid splitting the vote among yourself. People can't... You can vote every day for these things, but are they really going to vote for 5, 6 different categories? I don't think so. It's not fair to ask people that. I think it's best to stay very specific, and in fact, I think there are way too many categories for this poll. But if you just follow the instructions on the poll written below, and if you want to vote for me, vote for that one thing for me, and that should do it. I think I'll settle for the funniest person in the world. That'll be really great. I've been really busy, probably the busiest I've ever been since I moved out of the house, because when I was sick, I got nothing done, and that was about 2 weeks. So now I'm cramming like 3 reviews into 3 weeks to get them done for Halloween, and those are deadlines I set for myself. And it's a lot of work, working really hard, and I've kind of run into a little bit of writer's block. I'll try to explain my writing process to you. I think most of my writing is done when I'm not actually writing. I spend a lot of my writing time just kind of staring at a blank page, waiting for my muse to strike me, if that makes sense. And some reviews, it's much easier than others. I actually find the review writing process very easy. What I struggle with is actually the intro and the conclusion to every review. There's a lot of thought goes into those, even if it's something as simple as like the Nightmare thing, where I just kind of sit down and I start talking about should this be FMV hell, that kind of thing. And so I like the beginning and the ending to kind of connect, and I don't know why, but I kind of like the reviews to kind of flow one into the other, which is probably not a smart move, especially considering the episodic nature of these things, where there's not really a storyline between them. I've kind of created the storyline that goes between reviews, and so sometimes you're kind of forced to watch them in order, which may not be that good of a thing for my kind of idea, where I kind of have this chronology. I don't know, but I do tend to work a lot on the intro, just how to lead into things and how to lead out of them. When I get started, once I get started talking about a review or a game or something like that, it's really easy for me. But those intros, it's a bear. And so I've spent the last day or two just kind of staring at a blank screen, working on the next review, which is Pumpkinhead. So what I've kind of decided to do was I'm going to put Pumpkinhead off to next week, and this week I'm going to do Terror Tracks, because that one is essentially already done. I've just got to do a little bit of voiceover recording for that, and it's done. So I think that'll give me some time to prepare for that. And that way I'm not really rushing things. I don't want to rush reviews, because when I do them that way, they're not that funny. And so I want to do the best I can for you guys. And so I'm not going to be rushing with Terror Tracks. If I were to do Pumpkinhead now, I would be really hurrying, and I don't think that's going to work. Sometimes I think I should just kind of sit down and be like, I have a bad game, and it sucks, and here's why, and just, I don't know. But there's a lot of effort goes into that. What I think I would like to talk about now is there's a lot of movies coming out this week that are already out this week that I haven't seen yet because I've been working so hard, and I can't even remember what they are. Where the Wild Things Are, the Coen Brothers movie, the Last Man, or whatever it's called, that one's kind of gone under the radar, which is surprising for guys who have had that much success at the Oscars from No Country for Old Men, and the fact that I can't even remember the name of this movie. It's supposed to have a really shocking ending and things like that. Please don't spoil it if you're watching and posting comments on this. But there's a lot of movies I'd like to see this week, and a lot of movies I really don't want to see this weekend. Even this Friday coming up, there's movies. I don't want to see Saw 6. Tell you the truth, somebody I think Sean Faust offered to send me a promotional ticket to Saw 6, and I was like, I haven't seen 3, 4, or 5. I just have had not any interest. The fact that they're cranking these Saw movies out so quickly is phenomenal, but not in that good way. That, you know how I mentioned hurrying things and rushing them? Well, they're doing that, and I really don't... Is anyone really following the Saw series? Are you just watching it out of, like, obligation now? Like, you really want to see how it ends? I just can't believe they've gone on this far where the main killer is dead. Has been dead for quite some time, man. It's... And what really strikes me about Saw is the fact that this guy is a fucking shop-class savant. I think this guy's got cancer or something like that. At the height of this guy's illness, he is crafting like the most elaborate functional death traps in the world. Not only that, like he is like grooming apprentices, like 2 or 3 apprentices, sometimes false apprentices, to lure the true apprentices off the true path, and like setting these long-term, several-year-long schemes in motion to like trick and double cross people. He's swallowing condoms with like DV cassette tapes in them, so after he's dead the coroner will find stuff in his stomach. This guy's ability to plan long term rivals that of Batman, and that's saying something. This guy is fucking amazing, and it was straining credulity at the second movie, and now we're at like 6. Saw in Space, guys. We're going to see it someday. Not today, but someday. Saw in Space. Where the Wild Things Are has actually... I've heard the most glowing reviews I think I've ever heard from critics that I trust, that I follow. They were saying it's like the next Wizard of Oz, which, if you think about that, that is unbelievable praise to heap upon a movie. That... next Wizard of Oz, wow. And then I've heard people who were very meh about it. They were just like not really that impressed. So that's pretty polarizing. I haven't heard anyone say that it was really bad, but the fact that it has blown away people that radically... And I remember reading the book as a little kid, but I don't remember much about it. That's interesting to me. That reaction alone is pretty interesting to me. What I've been doing lately, though, is a lot of writing and a lot of playing games, because that was actually the news I was more interested about, was the fact that so many great games were coming out, very much anticipated games, and they came out at the same time, but the one I rented first was Brütal Legend. And I played that game from beginning to end, and to tell you the truth, I was not that impressed. And I know you're going to say that's just me being a curmudgeon, and actually I started to like it a little more as it went on, because I was much more interested in the story, which was very good, but I was less impressed with the gameplay, which was really not that good. Especially, I think we've played games like this. I don't know why I felt misled on this one, but I was expecting more of an RPG. In fact, I was kind of expecting a turn-based RPG, which I have not followed any of the buzz. I think that would have probably dispelled any illusions, but I for some reason I got it in my head that Brütal Legend was an RPG, and it's not. Oh man, it's not. What it is kind of a hybrid action-adventure type game where you run around and kill things. But what really surprised me about this one, and again, maybe it shouldn't have surprised me if I'd followed the buzz, but this game becomes at about the halfway point to be primarily an RTS. And right off the bat, there's kind of a negative connotation I get with that, because console RTSs, I've never liked the idea, because the whole notion of controlling an RTS with a controller seems wrong to me. And to be fair, I have not played any RTSs on the console, just based on that personal bias alone, like Command and Conquer, I think maybe Battle for Middle-earth, or whatever that one is called for the Lord of the Rings. Haven't played any of those on the consoles. Don't really want to, because I always thought that... I just can't imagine giving up the control of like mousing over a group of units and sending them off, and like assigning them to hotkeys on the keyboard and sending them off. Taking that down to controller level seems just abomination to me. With Brütal Legend, though, it becomes this RTS, which is really, really surprising to me, and I liked it a lot better than I thought I would, because I actually think Brütal Legend does RTS on the console about as well as it can be done on a console. Now, is that a good thing? I actually thought the RTS version far outstripped and exceeded the action-adventure part of the game. Is it unwelcome? Yeah, a little bit. But I think if it had just come right out and said it was an RTS, like from the beginning, instead of kind of leading down this path where you were kind of expecting to set up this action game, because I think the action elements are really lacking. But the RTS elements, I did not play the multiplayer, and I think actually that's where Brütal Legend will really shine, is the multiplayer, where you're building up these bands and these various units. I think there's a lot of strategy that has yet been untapped. And I think there's surprising depth when it comes to that game. Now, the computer in Brütal Legend, when you're playing it, cheats, which is pretty ass if you ask me. Especially in the last level, where the computer just outright summons out of nowhere like an army squashing force in the middle of the field that you're just like, where the fuck did that come from? I have no idea where the fuck it came from. So you've actually got to kind of play it 2 or 3 times and set up death traps for the unfair ambush that comes at the midpoint of these fights, which is not always good strategy. I really don't like it when a computer cheats, which is sometimes in Civilization. I play Civ 4, where Civ 2, I remember the computer would cheat a lot. Civ 3, I can't remember if it cheated that much, but I think it did. Civ 4, it would cheat, but only if you set it at a difficulty level where you allowed it to cheat, which I thought was kind of cool. So yeah, but the computer in that one cheats. Multiplayer RTS on Xbox Live, I don't know if there's much of a problem with rage quitting with the RTS. I think you might run into that a lot with Brütal Legend, though, if you start playing that. That kind of seems like the game where you start to realize you're losing, and there's not a whole lot you can do to pull yourself out of that when you start to lose booths and stuff like that. I think once somebody has started to gain a real advantage, it's hard for them to lose it. On the other hand, the fact that you're at a very personal level on this RPG, or the RTS, means that you can be easily misled with like feint attacks and misdirection and things like that. And I think there may also be a lot of intricacies with the way the units complement each other. Like if somebody is really focusing on one end of the spectrum with like melee combatants, you can come up with these other items. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't play it that much. I played through the single player campaign and just returned it. It was a rental. I played through the rental. And I wasn't unhappy. It was a very good rental, but it wasn't any more than that. I actually thought the story was much more interesting than the adventure, which is not really that good of endorsement of a game. But it was really hard to deny the enthusiasm and the awesomeness of the story, because this really is one of the more metal stories that you'll ever play, and you really want to see how it turns out, even if you're not that impressed with the game, and if you don't really care about the unlockables and the collectibles, and I didn't really care, but it was kind of fun watching the various metal things that would happen in this game, like just watching the landscape, and it really did feel like you were like living in an album cover, and the fact that the soundtrack was really cool, and it had bands like Manowar, which is one of my favorite bands of all time, Manowar. Every song Manowar ever did is about like dwarves coming down from the mountain and just fucking killing you with axes on motorcycles and things like that. It's like, Manowar is awesome if you've never heard of it. I remember getting the Manowar anthology, which has like one of the most homoerotic covers that I've ever seen. It's just like 5 muscle dudes in loincloths with like medieval weapons, and you're just like, that is so gay and metal, but mostly gay. What's really interesting about Brütal Legend is the fact that the voice acting is surprisingly good, and you wouldn't think that. Jack Black's enthusiasm counts for a lot in this. And the fact that they got so many metal legends like Ozzy Osbourne, who's the keeper of metal, and Lemmy from Motorhead, and the guy from Judas Priest and things like that. It really blends together and makes this kind of a much more interesting exercise in theory than it is in practice. But if you want to rent a game, this will keep you through the weekend. It's not bad. I would suggest it, but I wouldn't suggest buying it. It won't hold your interest that long, unless when you rent it, you're really, really into the multiplayer, the RTS element, and you might be. The second thing to come out, and I haven't finished this one yet, I actually probably should have started with this one, but had I started with this one, I probably would not have even gotten Nightmare done. And that was Uncharted 2. Uncharted 2 is awesome. And I think I don't know if people are only now just realizing that, but when I got my PS3, I had exactly 2 games for that. I've bought a few more since then, but really, the only 2 games worth playing on the PS3, and probably for a long time until recently, were Guns of the Patriots and Uncharted. And to tell you the truth, while I do love Uncharted 2 a lot, and it is really, really good, probably one of the best games to come out in recent years, a much, very inspired game, it really is almost identical to Uncharted. In fact, I was trying to find new features and kind of like any kind of evolution between Uncharted 1 and 2, and to tell you the truth, I can't find any. It plays basically the same. The controls, the various, like the type of story it is, level design, I haven't seen anything different. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. To tell you the truth, like, Uncharted still holds up. It's still really good. And if you're going to make a game, you might as well, if you're going to make an Uncharted game, at least don't go back from Uncharted 1, and they haven't. Now, I've only played up to, like, Chapter 5. And so there may be a lot of stuff I haven't seen yet. But it is a very cinematic game. In fact, I think the best quality of Uncharted 1 and 2 is the fact that it really does feel like you're playing a movie. They're not exaggerating in that score, because the voice acting, the cinematics, and the cinematic nature of the action feel so authentic. I think where it really shines is the quality of the animation and the motion capture, where when a person is injured, they start to walk a certain way. When they're navigating certain types of terrain, like uneven ground, or like when they're walking through, I remember in Uncharted 1 with a U-boat, whenever you were walking through the U-boat or hip-deep water, you would have like really authentic animation, like going through doorways. Your character would kind of grab the side of the door and kind of lever themselves in. The music is also really good. Sometimes even the character models, like when you're wet, your shirt gets wet, and when you start rolling around in the mud, you get muddy and things like that. It's little touches like that that make it really awesome when you consider it. And all that wouldn't be anything if the game wasn't that good, and it is. It feels like you're kind of playing, you ever see the movie Sahara, where you had Matthew McConaughey, like, with his shirt off most of the time, and you were running around these kind of really implausible historical legends and things like that, but at the time you don't really care. I kind of like Sahara, even though it was the exact same kind of Michael Bay-ish action movie crap that I would normally hate, but Sahara I really liked.